Hey everyone, Mark here with North of the Wall Garage. Thought it would be interesting today to talk about the brand new LX700H and the generally updated 2025 Lexus LX platform. Of course, the 700H is debuting with the Overtrail trim, which of course has not been previously offered on the Lexus LX in prior years. This makes it a nice counterpart to the GX Overtrail. This really represents the true LC300 Land Cruiser you can get in the United States. If you're watching this, you probably know Toyota offers a Land Cruiser currently, but that's really on the LC250 Prado platform, which is the same one that the GX550 is built on, basically a baby Land Cruiser. This is the full Land Cruiser, the one that you can get overseas, that is typically packaged as and sold as the Toyota Land Cruiser, the full-size Land Cruiser with the twin-turbo V6. The configurator just went live for this model, so thought it would be interesting to go through, build it, give some of my thoughts around the platform and the new Overtrail spec, and also just talk about the differences between this and the GX550 Overtrail. So if you are comparing the two, a little bit of a price difference there, but an interesting comparison nonetheless, and I think a valuable conversation to have. One of the benefits of the way that Lexus packages their vehicles is that there really aren't that many options. So you can see with the LX700H and the Overtrail model specifically, that has a list price of $115,000. A lot of money, of course, but unlike many of their European counterparts, Toyota and Lexus, typically the options list is pretty tight. So generally speaking, the MSRP of the vehicle with no options is going to be pretty close to one that's fully optioned out. And I think the delta here, as we'll see as we go through the configurator, starting at $115,000, fully optioned, no dealer accessories, of course, but fully optioned, you're going to get to about $120,000. So not too crazy. If you go and build a G-Wagon, for example, or a Porsche Cayenne, whatever, the options list can get really wild, well into the five figures, depending on what you add. So quick overview of the model. The LX700H is the hybrid LX that's offered with the twin-turbo V6 with a hybrid powertrain as well. And one of the trick aspects of this platform and a differentiator to the Sequoia, the Toyota Sequoia, which is built on the same chassis and has a similar power plant, is that the LX700H has a really trick alternator, such that if the hybrid system and the hybrid battery fails, this powertrain will be able to operate on engine only, which is a differentiator to other hybrid platforms. If the hybrid battery goes down with other platforms, the whole car is bricked. This is a really neat redundancy that Lexus has built into the vehicle, and I think makes it worthy of the Land Cruiser LX700 badge, of course. Other thing to note, similar to the GX550, the Overtrail is optioned with the 33-inch all-terrain tires, and you do have a triple locking setup, so the front, rear, and center differentials are locking, and I think Toyota hasn't offered that since the late 90s in the US. So really cool full Land Cruiser spec LX here. Really no punches pulled, but obviously that comes with quite a significant price. The other differentiator in comparison to the Sequoia is there's a little bit of a bump in power here, a 409 horsepower out of the motor, and altogether, thinking about that hybrid torque with the turbos involved from the gasoline engine, you're looking at 583 pound-foot of torque, which is a pretty healthy torque number. If you haven't seen an LX up close this generation, it is a large vehicle, but it is not quite a full-size SUV. So the way I would say that is it's certainly marketed as a full-size SUV, but if you get into this vehicle and then you get into the Sequoia or a Tahoe or something that's truly fully built out, same size as a half-ton truck, the half-ton models, those Sequoias, will be ultimately bigger. And one thing from a packaging perspective that I really wish Lexus did differently with the LX is to offer middle captain's chairs to make the third row more accessible. So unfortunately, I think one of the drawbacks to the 7-seater configuration in the LX600 and 700H is that you can only get it with the bench. As a prospective buyer myself, what I really would have liked to see is a 6-seater configuration such that the back row is very accessible, you can pass through in between, and 2 captain's chairs in the middle. And unfortunately, that is not offered on the LX. And you would think with the price, you would hope that that configuration would be available, but it's simply not. Part of that reason, I think, is to sort of make the ultra luxury package, which is a $140,000 vehicle, which is a crazy number. But I think the ultra luxury, which is a 4-seater configuration, I think that's just to make the 4-seater stand out even more. Obviously, captain's chairs would be nowhere near as decadent as this four-seater layout with the recliner and the footrest, but I still think that's probably part of the packaging decision that they've made with the LX here. So now I'll get into how I would build one of these. Full disclosure, I did put a little bit of money down just to get on a list for one of these. The allocations are extremely thin at the LX700h Overtrail. I know this for a fact. I've talked to several dealers, my local one, and also a very helpful individual at a New Jersey dealership who has said that basically for the northeastern United States, there's only a handful of LX700h Overtrails allocated for 2025. So to get your hands on one of these, this first year in 2025 is going to be pretty difficult. I think the other part is the LX in general is a very low volume vehicle, so they're just not building that many of them. Obviously, the price dictates part of that as well. So if you want to get your hands on one of these, I do advise trying to get on some sort of list. Some dealers require a deposit like mine. Others, typically you can get on the list without one. It just sort of depends how the dealer likes to do business. I'll talk through some more of my thoughts as we go and build this. I do think this solves for some of my cons of the GX, and if you've seen my cons video on the GX550, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about as I get into this. But nevertheless, let's get on with our build. This is for the 700h, which is the only powertrain available with the Overtrail trim. Just from a packaging perspective, again, I wish that Lexus pushed this down to the LX600 as well. If I had the choice, I would not take the hybrid. That's one of the reasons I chose the GX550 over the Toyota Land Cruiser currently, is I did not want a hybrid motor. The way the packaging works, you have to get the hybrid with the LX700h. As I mentioned earlier, part of my concerns with the hybrid powertrain are assuaged by the trick alternator, where if the hybrid battery fails, this powertrain can go all engine, which I think is really, really cool. So again, just a quick overview of the different trims. The Overtrail is actually the cheapest 700h trim. Basically comes fully loaded, right? Then there's the LX700h Luxury. Again, that just takes a little bit more of a bend on the luxury stance. You get the bigger wheels and real leather, of course. The Ultra Luxury is that four-seater configuration that I touched on earlier. And then the F Sport handling gives you a little bit of a different appearance. I actually like the F Sport handling grille. And previous to the Overtrail release, if you were looking for a proper off-road LX, believe it or not, it was actually in the F Sport handling packages. You could get a better differential selection with limited slip versus the other LX models offered. So if you were going to go ahead and try to build a copy of the Overtrail, you would get an LX600 with the F Sport, and that's as close as you could get to sort of a more off-road bend, despite the lower fascia and the bigger wheels and whatnot. So all of those things would have to be modified ultimately if you tried to make this into an off-road build. But previously, when there really was not an off-road option before the Overtrail, this is typically what buyers would seek out and then modify from there. So getting into the 700h Overtrail build, again, we're starting at 115/350. For me, I like unique colors, so I'm attracted to either the Earth, which is only available on the Overtrail. That's the tan color. You can see that that's also on the GX550 Overtrail, so that's a Overtrail special color. I think it looks pretty sharp on this car, honestly. A lot of people criticize the LX as being really ugly as a result of its large grille. I agree, it's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen, but when you see these in person, they have a real presence to them. It's a fairly large truck, and it just stands out since you really don't see that many on the road. So for me, yes, it's not nearly as good looking as the GX, but I don't think it's ugly by any measure. I do wish they made the grille a little bit more manageable, but obviously if you go crazy and get an aftermarket bumper that kind of chops into the middle here, you can sort of reduce the amount of grille that takes up that front fascia. So back to colors, I would either go earth or nori green. I have nori green on the GX550. I think it's a beautiful color. The pictures online really don't do it any justice. I think it looks really nice with a variety of accent colors. I think it looks really nice with black. It looks really nice with bronze. It's just a really pretty color. And if I was going to choose this for myself, and again, kind of thinking about, am I going to move forward with my allocation next year? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But ultimately, I think I would want to get back to nori green. I just think it's such a pretty color. It's so dynamic. It's so unique. And you can get it on a bunch of other Lexus models. So I guess that's the one negative, is Earth is only available on a very particular set of models. Whereas nori green, you can even get that on like the RX and the NX, I think. So that color really goes through the entire Lexus lineup. But it is just a damn good looking color. So for me, this would be my choice. Another packaging thing that I think is a big head scratcher for Lexus is the lack of availability of the brown interior with the nori green. The most classic automotive color pairing is green and tan. You see that on a bunch of beautiful cars, whether they're European, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's one of the all-time classic color combinations, and Lexus refuses to give that to us. So if you want the brown interior, you actually have to go with the earth color, and then you can select the stone brown interior. And the way that they're displaying colors in these models, the Overtrail model specifically, is they do this two-tone aspect where you have the bolsters are in black and the middle will be the color that you select. I wish the seats were monotone. I think it would be really pretty just to have this brown color flow throughout. But nevertheless, if you want the brown accents of the brown middles, the stone interior, you're going to have to go with earth on the exterior, or white or black. It's not available with nori green. If I was running the show at Lexus, I think they need to work on their packaging. I really don't understand why this isn't available with nori green. I think this would be really striking with a nori green exterior. So for my case, I value the exterior more than the interior, just from an appearance standpoint. So I'd still go with nori green, and then ultimately you'd be forced to go with the black on the interior. And when you look at the black, it's really not so different from an appearance perspective from the GX550 Overtrail black interior. You don't get the suede olive green accents. You see there is a suede accent here, but it's black. So it's a full black interior, which is a little boring, I suppose. But it's utilitarian. It does the job. And again, I'm not necessarily buying this truck for the interior. What I will say is it is a significant step up from the GX550. You do get the leather dash. There's a larger mix of higher end materials in this cabin in general versus the GX. Pricing is so crazy these days. You know, an $80,000 car 5 years ago, I would expect that the dash would be leather. I would expect, leather trim to really be everywhere. And that just isn't the case anymore. Now to get a full leather interior or an interior that is at least leather trimmed like this one is, you have to be over $100,000, which is just really nuts and kind of disappointing about the way that the industry is trending. Real leather is getting harder and harder to find. And so then just getting into the other two options that you have the Mark Levinson sound system, the 25 speaker sound system for $2,600. So I'll add that. And ultimately, it's interesting to get the owner's feedbacks on the Mark Levinson. People are very mixed on it. I don't think this is a must-have, but I'm just being honest. The way these cars are allocated, this is almost always on every top trim. So with the LX, I think it'd be really hard to find one with no Mark Levinson. I think it's just going to be on there. So to be realistic, I'm adding that. And if you want a discount, if you opt for the 5-seater, you do get an $1,800 discount. So if I went 5-seater, which I'm not going to, part of the reason I would flip to the LX is to get a 7-seater Overtrail configuration. I could use the extra room from a seating perspective. But if you went for the 5-seating configuration, you do get a $1,700 discount. And as a result of that 5-seater setup, you get a much larger cargo area, which is a nice benefit. So there's loads of accessories, and dealers love adding these on as this is a major profit area for the dealerships. Again, there's not a lot of options for the car itself, but these accessories will get added typically at the port. So the way Toyota and Lexus does this is it's actually really the regional dealer groups will do this as they decide, they'll add a handful of these accessories on nearly every truck or car. It's a little bit frustrating, again, when you're getting a top trim. You kind of want to pay XYZ price, and then all of a sudden there's all these other things that are added on that you may or may not want. Some folks have had success opting out of these port accessories. If you have a really good relationship with your dealer and you speak out about it, sometimes they will take them off and refund you the difference. Other times you can't get them off, especially on a brand new model that's in high demand. This is frankly where a lot of the profit margin is. So many of these dealers will not charge an added dealer markup, but they will add a lot of accessories that you must buy, and that's one of the ways that they're capturing more profit on the build. So here's the finished build. This is coming in at $118,000. Fully loaded, basically every option. And what is every option? Well, every option is the Mark Levinson sound system. There's really nothing else to add other than, again, those port install accessories that, for my build, I would hope there is none. I think this is a really good looking truck. I think this 3/4 view that you're getting right here just looks really nice with the nori green and the dark wheels and the big tires. I'd be really interested in fitting a bigger tire on this truck. I think it would just look really mean with 34s or 35s potentially. The 33s that come on both the LX and the GX550 are actually a shade under 33 inches. They're like 32.6 inches. So even putting a real 33 on these will give it a nice aggressive stance, and obviously you'll get the benefit of the added height. One of the other nice things about the LX models, all of them now for 2025, whether you get a base LX600 or you go fully optioned LX700H, all of them have the height control. So there are air chambers in the suspension to raise and lower the vehicle. So in this case, I think this Overtrail is depicted in off-road mode with suspension all the way raised. And then if you're parking the car or someone can't quite get into the tall vehicle, you can lower it for parking mode and it'll be nice and low for someone to get in much easier than they would normally. So what are the advantages of the LX700H, especially compared to the GX550 Overtrail, comparing the two different Overtrail models? Now, again, pictured here is the luxury model with the full leather interior. I do think this should be offered in the Overtrail. It's not. You get the two-tone interior if you want the brown in there, and it's a different shade of brown. I think this would look incredible in Nori Green. With a Nori Green exterior on the Overtrail model. Again, Lexus doesn't package it that way. If they did, I would gladly pay extra for this beautiful leather interior the way it is. But my point still stands regardless of the trim that we're talking about for the LX, is the LX is much more passenger friendly. You get the in-ceiling climate vents, which again I think is a ridiculous omission from the GX550 Overtrail. I've talked about this a lot in my cons video. And you also just get, again, those little nicer touches in the interior with better materials. It comes at quite the price, so are ceiling vents and nicer materials in the interior really worth a $30,000 difference between the Overtrail Plus model that I have? The answer is really no. But I think one of the aspects of the LX that's also very attractive is it has a great residual value. So you buy the LX, and obviously a car is never an investment. Even something interesting and historical or desirable, I would never ever call a vehicle an investment. Although I certainly hope some of my historic sports cars appreciate. That would be great. I'm not counting on it. So a car is really never an investment. But the LX does have a great residual value, so you're putting down, 120,000 here almost. But 5 years from now, it's going to be worth most of that money. So just looking at Auto Trader as an example of residual values, again, these are the LX600s, as the 700H was not available until 2025 currently. So historically, we'd be looking at LX600s. These retailed, the F Sport. This is just looks like a premium perhaps, or a luxury. These all retail between $96,000 and $105,000. This F Sport with 58,000 miles on it is listed for $83,000. Now, is that going to be the sale price? Probably not. I bet that's negotiable, of course. But I think it's worth pointing out, this represents over almost 80% of the original MSRP with some serious miles on it for the age of the truck. Now, obviously, again, this is only 3 years old. It has a ton of miles, but that's a big price. So my thinking is, with regular use, I do not drive enough to do 60,000 miles in 3 years. But, in my case, maybe this would have 30,000 miles on it. Doesn't really matter what the mileage would be, it seems like, right? Ultimately, these LXs tend to really keep their value. The GX, at least for the 460, the one that I owned, I bought that truck for $30,000. That was a couple years old with like 45,000 miles on it. Now, this was also before things got really crazy in the automotive industry, but at the time, that GX 460 was brand new, maybe a $58,000, $60,000 truck. I bought it for $30,000 a couple years old with 45,000 miles on it, so I got it for half off. That just does not happen with the LXs in any sort of recent years. So if I even kept this vehicle for 10 years, 5 to 10 years, it would be worth a significant chunk of that original price that I paid. That's very attractive to me. If you look at the G-Wagons have excellent residual values, but really any other truck, I don't care if you're talking about a Ford Raptor or any of the Chevy models, GMC, Escalades, you name whatever truck you can think of outside of the G-Wagon and true Land Cruisers or the LX like I'm showing here, and the residual values are terrible. So they lose so much value so quickly. If you ever want to buy one of the German SUVs outside of the G-Wagon, I highly, highly, highly recommend you buy used, because those things drop off a cliff. And that's just not the case with the LX, so it makes me feel a little more confident in terms of just putting a little bit more money to get this truck. In essence, the LX represents some incremental differences. It is the flagship model. There's something kind of cool about that. The triple lockers is really cool. Realistically, do I need triple lockers? No. The double lockers on the GX550 are plenty for me. Most of my off-road driving is very deep snow or on the beach, so I really don't even need the double lockers, but that's nice to have. It is really cool to have triple lockers. It's cool to have something that represents a halo car for off-road. I think the LX is really, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better off-road and on-road vehicle, something that can do both. The hybrid aspect only increases fuel efficiency by, I think, 1 mile per gallon. So it's basically nothing. I am interested to see if with the hybrid powertrain, it handles modifications a little bit better. So if you put a bigger tire on there, would you get as big of a penalty versus doing it with just a conventional gasoline engine? I really don't know the answer to that. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just physics, and you get the mile per gallon penalty no matter what. I have no idea. Regardless, I do like the LX a lot. It does have me thinking I'm not going to do it this year. I love my GX550. I really do, and I've spoke to that a lot in the different cons videos about how the truck is so good. All the complaints I have about it are really minuscule in comparison to the whole vehicle itself. But I do think the LX solves for a couple of the gripes that I have, and I would be really interested to live with one and just see if a lot of the things I've said about the GX that I view are negative, the LX would correct. So I hope this video was helpful. If you're considering the LX700h or just interested in what else Lexus is doing outside of the GX for off-road models, I think we'll continue to see the proliferation of off-road technology in Lexus. I think they realize that that's a pretty profitable segment, and they have great platforms to do it on, so I think we'll continue to see it. I wouldn't be shocked if in 2026 the LX600 is offered with an Overtrail package. We'll see. I think that would be really cool. So, of course, as always, I'll keep everyone posted about my progress here and just general interest. I also want to make another video eventually about Toyota and Lexus allocations. The ordering process is very unconventional for Toyota and Lexus, and I think it's worth covering in a long-form video. So I'll definitely get to working on that. But again, appreciate everyone's feedback and comments. I'd be interested just to hear your general thoughts on the LX700h, especially the Overtrail package, and if you think it's really worth the $30,000 up from the GX550. Again, my answer is probably not. But if you can swing it, it's certainly an interesting option. It is a halo vehicle to many. So thanks again for the support. Appreciate all the subscriptions and likes. It means the world to me. I love engaging with each and every one of you in the comments, even when the feedback is negative. It makes me smile. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.